Free speech is one of the most dangerous forces on earth, for benefit or harm. It creates power and suppresses power. By it, governments rise and fall. Ideologies succeed or fail. Ideas gain traction or are extinguished, and by it, people are sovereign or enslaved. It's why some authorities seek to suppress it, and why so many agents work to express it. Elon Musk wishes to bring free speech to Twitter, a terrifying idea to some people. Chinese Communist Party President Xi wants to suppress free speech in China. Some American universities have very restricted free speech zones, presumably to control the flow of ideas rather than allow a dynamic exchange of them. Free speech is threatening because it gives people power. Ideologies cower if you so imperil their power. Free speech is dangerous because it gives just as much voice to wrong thoughts as to right ones, to destructive ideas as to beneficial ones. Should every idea get airtime? Unfortunately, in the case of free speech, you can't have the benefit without the risk. Just as a baseball bat can be used for play or for violence, free speech can be used at the whim of the speaker for help or harm, to disseminate truth or lies. But who gets to be the arbiter? Joseph Justice Story, an expert in the U.S. Constitution from the middle of the 19th century, wrote, "Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press." That this amendment was intended to secure to every citizen an absolute right to speak or write or print whatever he might please without any responsibility, public or private, therefore, is a supposition too wild to be indulged by any rational man. This would allow every citizen a right to destroy at his pleasure the reputation, the peace, the property, and even the personal safety of every other citizen, unquote. Free speech comes with tremendous responsibility. James Kent, an American jurist and legal scholar, wrote, quote, "Every citizen might freely speak, write, and print on any subject, but is responsible for the abuse of that liberty. Without such a check, the press, in the hands of evil and designing men, would become a most formidable engine, as mighty for mischief as for good," unquote. In other words, free speech doesn't mean that other people need to accept what you are saying or that there will be no repercussions from what you say. Certain speech, such as hate speech, racism, or lies, should raise opposition, or society has lost its moral moorings, but you still have a right to say it. We need to uphold the rights of people to speak, even if we disagree with it. We can have free speech and peace at the same time. We can disagree with our neighbor and still love them as the Bible commands. In a similar way to what Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 13, pressing our rights or pressing for equity without love is a battle cry rather than a way to true justice. But we all recognize that even free speech in the public square needs to have restrictions if we're going to pursue a just and moral society. Even under the U.S. Constitution, speech such as defamation of character, false advertisement, and incitement of violence are specifically prohibited. See, even free speech cannot be without boundaries, and that's where a serious problem arises. What are those boundaries? Who gets to set them? And who gets to enforce them? You see, any society founded on freedom will inevitably face a clash of values and priorities. Do we need to more value freedom or justice? Do we more value religious expression or civil preferences, equity or equality? Do we pursue freedom at the cost of safety, or do we pursue safety at the cost of freedom? See, freedom can easily lead to tyranny or oppression when it is confused with license and detached from both truth and integrity. It then becomes a tool for power, privilege, and persecution grounded in arrogance. If we treat freedom as what is advantageous to me, rather than what is good for all, freedom can only result in instability, violence, and savagery. Platforms become more important than people. See, here is where we should be able to trust our courts, legislators, and an honest and free press to keep us on the right track. Because without that truth and objectivity in the places of power, speech itself becomes a tool of deceit and oppression. So we're back to the question of then who gets to be the arbiter of free speech? I say that we need a variety of these arbitrators in the public square. Liberals can have their agencies and outlets, conservatives theirs, Republicans theirs, and Democrats theirs. Some censorship is needed, and we'll never all agree on who should have the authority to do that. Even here, we need plurality. But the problem comes when all of one ideology and none of another is doing the filtering. As long as there is an array of voices being heard, people can be master of their own positions. But if they only get to hear one position, we're left with fascism, whether from the left or right, patrician or plebeian. So I'm arguing that free speech, despite its inherent risks, is necessary for a just and moral society. The Christian view of God's purpose for humanity runs far deeper than civil rights, equality, and even safety. Fundamental values in a Christian worldview are love, peace, truth, freedom, justice, goodness, integrity, and community. And these values can thrive where people are free and not oppressed, where people can speak the truth without fear, where people can live in a moral community without censorship. The Apostle Paul wrote in Ephesians 4:29, quote, "Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Unquote. 1 Corinthians 10:23 says, quote, "Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but not everything is constructive. Nobody should seek his own good, but the good of others." Close quote. Talk to me about where you agree and disagree with me on this.